It's your bedtime.
Five Nights at Freddy's Help Wanted 2 brings the animatronics back in full force. But which of these mechanical, nightmarish monsters are the strongest ones you need to face? I'm Kifinosi with 1UP Binge, and this is every Five Nights at Freddy's VR Help Wanted 2 animatronic weak to powerful. As usual, we'll be starting at the bottom with the weakest character and working our way up to the most powerful. One of the initial adversaries you encounter, it's unsurprising that Glamrock Freddy ranks at the bottom of our list due to his simplicity. Using the heat gun to eliminate the ice on his arms and then initiating the repairs is straightforward. Given the overall significance of the temperature gun, being concerned about Freddy's temperature will be a primary focus. However, with a steady hand and some patience, maintaining him in the correct zone is pretty simple, making him an easily manageable threat to overcome. Not a significant threat, but still a challenge to overcome, our next animatronic is Helpy. Helpy makes frequent appearances throughout the game, especially in the first aid minigames. Scanning him with your gun and following the instructions is straightforward. However, when he starts screaming, he can be quite a nuisance. Quickly silencing him is necessary to avoid death, but the instructions are so simple that dealing with this shouldn't be too difficult. Additionally, during Whack-A-Bon, he's one of the few things you need to avoid, which can add some difficulty, although he's quite distinct from the other elements in that game. One of the challenges introduced by Helpy is the presence of Pig Patch. Pig Patch is most notably featured in the self-titled First Aid Pig Patch, where he hides within the vent system near the first aid office. Despite only appearing in the second half of the minigame, he becomes the most significant threat, frantically crawling toward your location whenever Helpy screams and the gas mask is absent. This movement is notably swift, covering half the distance by the time you retrieve the mask. While certain instances such as the hammer task predict when Helpy will scream, preparing for Pig Patch is relatively straightforward. However, at a certain point, he initiates movement regardless, requiring you to keep a vigilant eye on him for him to retreat. This elevates his position on our list, even though he remains a manageable threat. A more challenging iteration of Pig Patch is our next animatronic, Lefty. Lefty serves as the primary antagonist in the second First Aid minigame, adhering to many of the same rules as Pig Patch. Due to the frequent screams from Helpy, Lefty is more prone to appear. They exhibit greater speed and more frequent vent runs. The second minigame even introduces advertisements that attract Lefty even when Helpy is silent. Turning off the ads is simple enough, but when trying to handle both at once, Lefty's no laughing matter. But if you want to laugh, look no further than the Biddy Babs and MiniRenas. This pair of doll-based animatronics makes an appearance in the sister location mode called Puppet Master. Their behavior mirrors that of their original counterparts, requiring a shock due to their interference with your power. The prompts and buttons are straightforward, and the action is extremely simple even though they attack quite frequently. Remarkably, they're even easier to handle than their previous versions because the MiniRenas that once obstructed your view can now be thrown off, rendering the task almost laughably simple. However, the frequency of their attacks coupled with Balara's music can occasionally pose a few problems. Another annoying threat to deal with is the Staffbots, which appear in a few different minigames, but most notably in Salon Staff Makeover, where they're getting makeup from you. It requires a quick, steady hand as you're under a time limit. However, the makeup and props are all quite simple to handle, and the only annoying part is spinning the prop carousel. However, it is worth noting that the TV can glitch out and make it hard to tell what to do, but this isn't as big of a problem as one may make it out to be. They're also a problem to deal with in the Fizzy Faz Nights and need to be kept in check so that they're working, which is rather simple and consistent to do, as they're not even the main threat of the Fizzy Faz Nights anyway. Later nights do make things a bit more complex, but never to the point of being too hard to handle, hence their placement here. On the contrary, the Staffbot Supervisor poses a significantly greater challenge. Making an appearance in the hard mode versions of the Fizzy Faz Nights, its entire concept revolves around making your life unnecessarily more difficult. It issues additional orders on a smaller screen through the window, demanding quicker fulfillment while simultaneously managing your original order. This dual demand intensifies the difficulty on these nights, particularly because the Staffbot Supervisor tends to appear at the most inconvenient moments. Initially just a harder version of the Staffbots, our next antagonist is Roxanne Wolf. Roxanne is weird because she has two very different minigames you have to deal with. In Salon Glam Makeover, she works very similarly to the Staffbots. She requires makeup to be placed onto her within a rather short time frame. However, she does take a step up because she requires constant attention.
Pay attention to me.
The longer you don't look at her, the more likely she is to attack. Combining the attention meter and the time limit can make this a very hard mission for a lot of people. In Roxy Repair, however, it's essentially just a harder version of the previous. She requires far more attention and her meter will build much faster. Her ruined face also makes it harder to find where to place certain items, which can be a hassle, but add in the radio and she calms down so quickly that she doesn't rise too much higher. While Roxy loves attention, the Plushies require it. Bonbon, Bonnet, and Plush Baby are the main antagonists of Whack-A-Bon Pokemon, where you essentially play whack-a-mole with them. Bonking them on their heads is easy enough, and while it can require quick thinking and reflexes, it's not too big of a deal. Plush Baby does make things more difficult because she requires more hits than her plushy brethren. This does make things harder to manage, but not by too much more than the previous rounds. Especially considering you can bonk her like 10 times in a few seconds. What makes this quite difficult is the later rounds, where darkness makes it harder to distinguish where they are, but at the very least, you can still bonk them twice as well. The Plush Babies do also appear in other minigames, such as the later Phaser Blast levels and Bonnie Bowl, but they're little more than nuisances. Job Interview is where they become an actual problem, and very annoying to deal with considering how in-depth the red light green light minigame is and how you need to find all of them. Also somewhat of a strong nuisance to contend with is Funtime Chica. Funtime Chica is a straightforward adversary and, akin to other portrayals of her, quite easy to handle in the broader context. Your main task is to keep her lured to one side of the map, thereby blocking other animatronics from reaching you. Achieving this involves placing Mr. Cupcake on one side or the other, drawing her down that path as she attempts to eat Mr. Cupcake. Constantly switching sides is the objective as she's consistently drawn to it. However, if she manages to reach and devour it, you're out of luck, and that marks the end. The next sister location antagonist is Balara, who plays very similarly to one of her classic portrayals as she appears in Balara Gallery that plays almost exactly like it did in Sister Location. Listen out for Balara and MiniRenas as you crawl through the gallery. This mode is like 10 times scarier thanks to the VR headset, but with how good the surround sound is on the PSVR 2, it's actually quite easy to do. This is helped by the fact that there is a long startup before she starts dancing. The minigame is still quite difficult, especially if you have hearing problems or jump too easily when the giant robot starts dancing near you, which is a fair reaction to have. The next animatronic on our list is the first exclusive to hard mode, Yendo. Yendo is the endoskeleton of a Funtime animatronic that appears in the Breaker Room hard reset minigame. He mimics the behavior of Funtime Freddy, gradually advancing toward you and being repelled by you using the megaphone. While he appears to be more active than Freddy and demands a more vigilant eye, Yendo can't rank higher than the white and pink bear since he lacks some of Freddy's quirks present in other modes. So, surprisingly, ranking after his hard mode variant is Funtime Freddy. Funtime Freddy's gameplay closely resembles his previous incarnation, requiring doubling by the megaphone while you attend to the breakers. Although this process can be somewhat exploited, the actual task of fixing the breakers is far from simple. Funtime Freddy also makes appearances in other sister location missions where he behaves much like his original counterpart. He hurls Bonbon down the hall and retains similar catchphrases, adding a bit of hassle to deal with. But he's not the only one having a fun time, because Funtime Foxy ranks next on our list. Funtime Foxy works essentially the same as they did in previous games, needing to be constantly watched like the pirate version before him. However, because of how quick they are, the threat is not as simple as it may seem. In fact, Funtime Foxy seems much more gung-ho than the original Foxy and will run down the hall very quickly if you stop paying attention for even a few moments. Luckily, there are ways to deal with them without causing too much distress. Attracted to distress, our next antagonist is Scrap Baby. Scrap Baby takes basically everything from Pig Patch and Lefty and turns that all up to 11. Not only do Helpy and the TV go off more often, meaning she appears quite regularly, but she moves so fast that if you aren't lightning fast yourself, you're dead. She can also appear from the front rather than just the sides, which makes her so much harder to navigate. The only reason she's not further along in the list is because by this point in the game, you've got this minigame squarely handled, but her added complexity is much more difficult than one might think. Also, quite the complex threat is our next animatronic foe, DJ Music Man. DJ Music Man has two minigames which both follow the same formula. Listen to the funky beats he lays down and then try to copy them as closely as possible within a minute. This is surprisingly easy, or at least it seems to be, with the main problem being how imposing he is, but even that doesn't make him too much harder. The harder version of the minigame does make things a bit more of a struggle, however, as it also adds the mini music men that you have to flash away during the mission and more beats you need to copy. This does add a layer of complexity, but not enough to push him higher. Dancing into our next spot, however, is Head Chef Bot. The main threat of the food service minigames, they require you to fulfill orders to the number and send them out to guests in a time limit. While this is one of the easier fulfill this request style missions, it can be very hard to handle due to the sheer specificity.
I am only going to say this once.
Head Chef Bot's not particularly the most complex challenge, but when you've got a dozen orders to fill and a hungry animatronic coming after you, things can be a little difficult, you know? Taking all the difficulty of the previous, Glamrock Chica ranks next on our list. Glamrock Chica is weird because she's mostly an antagonist force during the second and third food service minigames. In these, she's very clearly just sort of a background threat, stealing the food from the Staffbots and forcing you to be quick on your feet to create the meals. She also will kill you if you get any order wrong in the first segment, making sure you need to be perfectly on point. In both both versions, she needs to be looked at constantly so you can force her away, which does make things annoying, especially considering how hard mode adds onto it. She does appear during Fizzy Fast Night 4, where you have to trash ingredients to lead her away, and this can make her very annoying because of how much stuff you need to do. Plus, of course, she pops up a lot, so it's not like she's an easy threat to handle. At the very least, trashing ingredients doesn't set you back too far. Speaking of hard mode, the next on our list are the Glamrock Endos. These endoskeletons make two major appearances, one of which being the aforementioned hard mode food service. As we're making the food for Chica, these big hulking animatronics will start lurching towards you slowly, and if they get too close, they'll kill you. They can be pretty easily shooed away by flashing them with the camera, which of course makes them seem pretty easy, but considering the timer, it's not that simple. There are other major appearances in the hard mode exclusive mission Endo Warehouse. They act pretty similarly, needing to be shooed away with the camera, but add on the actual scope of the mission and things change. It's a pretty simple memory game that starts off super easy and gets extremely hard within moments. Sure, you get to see where all the starter cards are at, but when you have a dozen of them to sift through, it's really not that easy. Quite the pertinent threat on our list is the Daycare Attendant. He has 3 major minigames, and in the first is where he gets his ranking. During arts and crafts, you're timed. In fact, it's one of the only minigames where this is the case. You also have to copy the art given to you almost exactly, which can be a problem for many people, especially in VR, myself included. The one saving grace is that the art isn't very complex. In fact, it's painted by numbers, but that doesn't make it any easier under a timer. The paper pal section is far more difficult, and the timer, mixed with power outages, make creating things very hard for many people. In his moon form, the Daycare Attendant is pretty distinctly simple to handle, since all one needs to do is shine the flashlight upon him for long enough to get him to go away. In Carousel, this is more difficult because you're busy doing other things, and the hectic chaos going on around you makes it harder to find out exactly where he's at. Taking what makes the previous foe hard and amping it up, next on our list is Jacko Moon. Jacko Moon is the hard mode variant of Moon, and it makes that obvious by being the main foe in Cinder Carousel. In Cinder Carousel, he appears far more often and takes longer to scare off with the flashlight, which can make the regular gameplay far more difficult. He also appears as an optional antagonist in Captain Foxy's log ride. He'll only appear when taking the alternate paths, and upon doing so, he needs to be blocked off from reaching you. This requires a steady hand and good aim. Luckily, he doesn't have anything crazy up his sleeves, but that doesn't make him an easy foe to handle. Another hard foe to handle is the owner of the Bronze Medal of Power, Ennard. Ennard appears most notably in the sister location office minigames, where you need to keep an eye on the cameras and block him from attacking you. You can block him by closing your doors or the vent in front of you. It'll be pretty obvious when he's going to attack from either location, both on the cameras and in the actual locale in front of you. When he appears, it requires a quick hand to block him off, as he can rush down the vent or hallway in a mere moment to kill you. This makes him one of the hardest foes because he requires far more attention than the others, hence this very high ranking. But taking our silver medal of power is Circus Baby. Only appearing in one minigame, Baby makes the most of it because hers is one of the most difficult. In this minigame, you need to play a variety of games with her plush babies. These will range from flashlight tag, where you need to shine your light on them to keep them at bay, to hide and seek, requiring you to look at the tiny cameras and shock the babies. She'll come down at you during this and try to kill you regardless, showing that she's essentially toying with you. Baby's minigame is by far one of the most difficult, and if not for the fact that she only appears in the one, she'd probably take our top spot. That being said, the most formidable adversary you encounter isn't a physical threat, but a mental one. Earning our gold medal of power is Glitch Trap. Glitch Trap is a unique case where we focus more on the lore than direct gameplay for obvious reasons. Aside from a notable minigame where he appears as a hand puppet capable of disrupting the Bonkabon machine and an appearance in Princess Quest 4, his impact on actual gameplay is limited. However, when you consider the lore, he stands out as by far the most powerful opponent. Although he never makes a physical appearance, he controls every aspect of the game. He locks hard mode minigames behind the Vanny mask, attempts to thwart your progress in the makeover minigames, and orchestrates the final moments of the game where you're killed and transformed into a Staffbot. Similar to Springtrap before him, Glitchtrap has his influence in every aspect, making it evident that he's the most powerful. He does consistently return, and it just so happens that he claims a top spot on our list.